Will Black Clover ever come back? Manga fans are enjoying the latest arc and everyone really liked the movie, so you would think the series is in a good spot. But you also have to consider that there's no anime right now, there's no statement in regard to when it's coming back, and the manga is on a seasonal release. In other words, the manga has these big gaps in between chapters, and it's been like 3 years since the last episode of the anime. So while fans are enjoying that content that is out, the reality is that there's a relative lack of content right now. As a result, I'm sure a lot of people are wondering the same thing. Will the series ever return to the levels of hype it had a few years ago? That's why in this video I'd like to go over the state of Black Clover as a whole, discuss some of its issues, but also explain why it's got a bright future ahead. First, we should start with the biggest problem. The anime, specifically the fact that we don't have one. I mean, obviously we do, but we're not getting new episodes right now. The last episode came out in March of 2021. That was almost 3 years ago. In that time, there's been a ton of huge anime that have come out. Obviously, My Hero Academia being one of them. Whereas before MHA and Black Clover would sort of compete with each other, My Hero has still been releasing episodes in these last few years. And obviously My Hero is a bit more mainstream than Black Clover. Not just because of the gap, but clearly it only contributed to that. So in that respect, if you're a fan of the anime, you might be wondering what's going on. Even worse, you might be worried that the anime is never coming back. And to that, I can safely say that it's not going to be the case. If you are a fan of Black Clover, then you know that anime delays are nothing new. I think the current one makes like 3 delays. I think it's 3, but don't quote me on that. In any event, there's definitely been at least 1 or 2. And part of it is usually because of the typical anime problems like the anime catching up to the manga, which when you go back you can see this in the fair amount of filler episodes Black Clover has. But of course, this recent one is at least partly due to the fact that Studio Pierrot was working on the big movie. So the rational conclusion is that they put the anime on pause so they could focus on the movie. Some of you might be wondering why they don't just do like MHA and do a movie and the anime at the same time. And the logical conclusion is because this delay has allowed the manga to continue, especially since the manga has had its own delays. So when the anime does eventually come back, there will be plenty of space between the manga and the anime to properly adapt the source material. Unfortunately, we don't have any teasers for the next batch of episodes. Some people are saying 2024, but my gut feeling is something more like 2025. Either way, with the manga reaching its end and the movie doing as well as it did, I don't think it'll be much longer before we're getting new episodes of the anime again. But speaking of the movie, let's talk about how well that really did. Actually, before I do that, make sure to like the video if you're enjoying it so far. It's the easiest way to support the channel, and it helps spread the video to other viewers like you. Now, obviously Black Clover fans loved the movie, so when we talk about how it's part of the reason we don't have the anime right now, almost every Black Clover fan would probably say that it was worth it. 1, just because we finally got a movie after years of asking for one, and 2, because the movie we got was actually good. But more skeptic fans might not be as sold. Some people might say, yeah, it's cool, we got a movie, but most people could only see it on Netflix, and we haven't had the anime for 3 years. I personally haven't seen the movie yet. I keep saying I'm going to, and then I just don't make the time. I heard nothing but great things, but I was curious how well it actually did, so I did some quick research. The movie had a limited release in Japan, and everyone else got it on Netflix. In 2 days after it released, the movie did something like $330,000, which, you know, really isn't that much money, especially when you look at how much money these other anime movies are doing. So when you look at it like this, some people might take that number and be like, bro, this movie was a flop. But here's why that's really not true. First, I'd like to point out that COVID might have been a big factor in the turnout for this movie. Second, this was a limited release, so we don't know how many theaters they even showed the movie in over in Japan. And finally, this is one of, if not the only anime movie that was available for streaming right away. I don't know about Japan, but if they had it on Netflix too, it's like, well, why would I go to the movies if I can just watch it at home? Even if they didn't, everyone else could still do that. And you look at its performance on Netflix, and the movie got a ton of views. So did the movie sell a lot of tickets? No. But Black Clover fans finally got a movie. The movie was great, and it performed really well on Netflix. Overall, the movie was clearly a big success. Maybe not a major blockbuster hit like one of the Demon Slayer movies, but still, it checked off a lot of big boxes. So obviously that means that series is saved because it got a really good movie, right? Well, now we gotta talk about the manga. And this is where things aren't as straightforward, because the manga has had a lot of ups and a lot of downs. And to get to the bottom of this, we need to go back to the end of the last arc, the Spade Kingdom arc. Actually, before I go on, it should go without saying that if you're not caught up on the manga, the next part of the video will contain some spoilers. So prior to this arc, we had the Joint Struggle arc. This arc, without a doubt, is one of the biggest in Black Clover. We got a time skip with all new character designs and abilities. In particular, we got a beefed up Asta and the new character Noct. We got the Dark Triad and their fights. And best of all, we got the insane team up between Asta and Yami. You take all that and you go into the next arc with tons of hype like the series has never seen before. And then the Spade arc starts off really well. It has a lot of things going for it. For example, Magna vs. Dante is still one of the best fights in the entire series. You also have Yuno vs. Zenon, another incredible fight that had tons of build-up. But this arc isn't without its flaws. Personally, I felt this arc had some pacing issues that made it drag on at times. A lot of people felt that some of these fights were big letdowns and that certain characters didn't live up to their potential. Another big one is the fact that almost nobody in this arc dies, which of course has been a big problem with the series since the beginning, but you get to the biggest war in the series and it's still a problem. Suddenly, it really bothers people. And to top it all off, you obviously have Lucifero. There's a number of issues with him. First off is the fact that he's like the king of devils, and yet all he really does is punch people. And then there's the fact that his fight just isn't that good. It feels last second, it's not as cool as the previous fights, and it feels like the characters win too conveniently. Which I know there's plot reasons for that, but still. Coming off of what everyone viewed as a near-perfect arc, you finish the Spade arc and now people aren't really that thrilled with the manga. Then the new arc begins shortly after, there's another time skip, and we get the big plot twist that Julius was Lucius, the other sibling of the Dark Triad, and he's been plotting to take over the world from the beginning of the story. After the manga goes on hiatus, Asta is defeated and he's sent to the Land of the Sun where we meet the Shogun, Ryuya, Yami's sister Ichika, and we're introduced to Zeten, which expands Asta's use of his ki. The arc continues, but then we get more delays, people start saying the chapters are getting shorter, and then finally it's revealed that the manga is going to be delayed again as it moves to Jump Giga, meaning that it will now be released quarterly rather than weekly. So you take all of this, and to a lot of people, it might seem like the Black Clover manga is dead, that the series is just on a downward spiral that it'll never recover from. But you wanna know what? That's a big load of crap. Admittedly, I had issues with the Spade arc and the current arc, so after a while, I kinda just dropped the manga. But while I've been catching back up on Jump, I went back and started over. I went back to the Lucius plot twist and reread all 30 or 40 chapters. And on a second read-through at my own pace without everyone yelling on Twitter, this arc is actually pretty good. While it still feels redundant, I like the Julius twist and it works really well. Some people say that Black Clover is just copying One Piece and Wano, but Yami's homeland was established ages ago, and the Land of the Sun is clearly very different from One Piece's Wano. And while none of these fights are nearly as hype as, say, the Joint Struggle arc, I think the fights we've seen have been pretty solid. I'm obviously curious to see how this final battle plays out, but I'm really liking this arc now. I think most of the problems I thought this arc had were just Black Clover haters yelling on Twitter. For example, a lot of people were saying before how the chapters were getting shorter and shorter, and they definitely feel short. Like some of these chapters are only like 13 pages. But then I was like, how short is short really? So then I looked at Black Clover's rival, My Hero, and guess what? Some of the My Hero chapters are just as short as Black Clover chapters. Then I looked at One Piece and JJK, and guess what? They're basically the same as Black Clover. So where I thought Black Clover was racing through chapters, in reality, it was mostly all in my head. Which brings me back to my big question. Should we be worried about the future of Black Clover? Absolutely not. On the contrary, I think Black Clover fans have a lot to be excited for. We have a great movie, we should be getting new episodes in the next year or so. If they're anything like the last season, they'll look amazing. And there's a lot to look forward to in the final arc of the manga. If anything, I'd say there's reason to be skeptical of how Tabata sticks the landing with this ending, but like I said, this arc is actually pretty good. So while Black Clover might feel like it's on the sidelines right now, especially compared to some of the big series, the reality is that there's a lot to be excited for. Because of that, fans can be confident that Black Clover has a bright future. But now I'd like to hear what you think. What do you think happened to Black Clover? How would you rate the current arc? Share your thoughts and see what everyone else has to say down in the comments. I'll pick my favorite and share as comment of the week on my community tab. And if you'd like another discussion like this one, then check out my recent video on bad manga. In that video, I discuss how bad manga can actually ruin their anime adaptations. You can find it in the playlist linked right here. Until then, thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.